How do you do, ladies and gentlemen? What's the real truth about Citizen Kane?
It'll probably turn out to be a very simple thing.
Hey everybody, hope you're doing well. I'm Parker.
And I'm Max.
And welcome back to another episode of Better Than Citizen Kane, the highly subjective show where we look at a movie and ask that titular question. Because when every movie ever made is a reasonable contender for the title of greatest film of all time, you have to wonder, better than Citizen Kane?
This week, Parker's going to be meeting with his music composer team as he preps to release another single. Meanwhile, I'm going to prove Parker's tarot reading of me wrong by saying my fear is gone. I think I liked a French New Wave film. But before we get into all of that, we're not talking about that yet. Please, Parker. This guy's always interrupting me. before we get into all of that, we simply must discuss Agnès Varda's 1962 film, Cléo from 5 to 7.
Mm-hmm.
Parker.
Alrighty, yes.
Parker, you brought this film to the show.
I did.
I'm just a little curious on why don't you tell the folks at home about why you brought it to the show? Should I do this? Should I talk like this?
Yeah, that's nice. That's good. I think
good.
that works well.
Okay. Good.
So yeah, I thought this would be a good film to bring because I always like having reasons to examine the work of female filmmakers on the podcast. I think that oftentimes discussions of film history are very American male centric, and I think that there's a lot more to film other than that. So A, really just wanted to bring it for that reason, and B, as we've talked about, this podcast is mostly just an excuse for you and I to get each other to watch movies. And I was like, okay, Max has planted his flag about the French New Wave, and in a lot of ways I agree with you, but also I was like, there's some good ones though, Max. I promise. There are some that are good, and
well, okay.
I thought I could trick you into one. You know?
Sure. Yeah, and I appreciate both of those efforts a lot. More so the first one, which is to say, yes, we love to bring the work of female directors onto the show each year. Mm-hmm. And as for the French New Wave, I just want to clarify my flag a little bit, because here's what Parker's referring to, is that I specifically, like, there are good ones out there, Max. I don't argue that there are only bad French New Wave films. I just don't like it. I don't have a good time. I rarely have a good time. And it also is the situation where typically I've been brought into a French New Wave film not knowing that it was going to be kind of an experiment with form and those sorts of... Specifically, my main experience was going into last year at Marienbad without knowing what it was going to be, and then I was like, oh, yeah, oh, and I think my Letterboxd review says something to the effect of, like, this movie had this reviewer going, huh? And that's okay. I think is my final note in that review. I just, I watched Breathless in film school, and I was like, it's not for me.
Sure.
And so I just tend to avoid French New Wave as a general rule.
That makes sense. Listen, I'm not popping on a French New Wave film every Saturday.
I was just about to ask Parker where you stand on French New Wave.
It is entirely, like, the other reason that I wanted to bring a French New Wave film, not specifically, this film, but just, something to represent the movement, is that generally speaking, I feel the same way about French New Wave films as I feel about Citizen Kane itself. Of technically, I can appreciate the hell out of it, and I think there's very interesting examinations and analyses, and, like, it on a technical level, there's a lot going on under the hood. As an audience member, they're not really for me.
Mm-hmm.
So that was another reason I was like, all right, we could bring something that kind of fits that bill.
Yeah, and this is our first French New Wave film on the show. And it is a major moment in film history, obviously. Yeah. So I think it is important that this era is represented. It will likely be represented again at some point on this show, I imagine. And so as far as representing this moment in this era and this movement on the show, You'd seen this before.
I had. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you like this film.
I do like this film. Yeah.
Yeah. So that also played a factor as to why this one in particular.
Sure.
I imagine. I also liked this film. This is a movie that, you hear the title of a lot and you go, yeah, I'll get to that. And I'm glad that I finally got to get to that,
Yeah.
When did you see this for the first time?
I can't place it exactly. I'm guessing it was either late high school or early undergrad. I know that it wasn't like, checking my letterbox, it wasn't any time in the last 5 years. But I do remember seeing it for the first time. Yeah, I really couldn't tell you if that was in high school or like very beginnings of undergrad, but it's around that time, 18, 19, something like that. Kind of trying to delve deeper into more of world cinema. Because I had done a lot of like American film history when I was younger, going to the library, but foreign films were a little harder to get a hold of. And so along that logic, my assumption would be it was probably college, like probably picked up from like the school library or something like that. But yeah, I remember watching it. I'd seen some of the others. I'd seen Breathless. I'd seen, I think I'd seen Last Year, Marion Bod. But yeah, like this was one that I'd heard talked about a lot, and wanted to check out. And I would say this is probably my favorite out of the French New Wave films. I like this one a fair amount.
What do you like about it? Well, okay, first, I'd heard of this before. It had been on my watch list. I'd never seen it. I didn't really even know anything about it.
Nice.
Going in, and I had a very nice time.
Good.
But okay, so what do you like the most about this compared to other French New Wave, but also just generally?
Compared to other French New Waves, I think that it has, what's the word I'm searching for? It has like enough of a anchor point for coming to it if you've only had experience with kind of Western narrative style filmmaking. There's enough of a backbone here that you can latch onto while also introducing new viewers to a lot of the avant-garde techniques of the French New Wave of, nonlinear editing, repetition, playing around with time and space and apparatus theory and stuff like that. It gives you enough of like a foundational anchor point if this is something new to you that you can still engage with and not feel completely lost. Like, I think diving into the deep end if you're not knowing what you're expecting, kind of like your experience with Last Year at Marion Bod, kind of not knowing what it was and then running into that. I find that it's maybe the most approachable out of them while still having a lot of the kind of core tenets of the movement itself. And then just personally, I just like the character study of it. I like latching on to Cléo as a character and kind of seeing her growth and progression in the way she moves through the space. I also really enjoy any real-time films are always an interesting little experiment to me. I like them a lot of like, okay, we're going to tell this story as it is happening in the exact amount of time that it occurs, which I enjoy quite a bit. So yeah, I think those would be kind of the main points of why I enjoy it more than the others.
Yeah. No, I think I'm with you on that. I think Cléo as a character is someone that I can connect with, and I think not to say I can't connect with other people in French New Wave, but oftentimes it doesn't feel like that is quite as much of a priority.
Totally.
And I say that not having obviously visited too many of them. But I really responded to kind of the character study nature of the film. And also something that has shifted for me since I probably last visited French New Wave is I've really grown to appreciate vibe films in a lot of, films that are just kind of like specific vibes for a long time. Like
totally
where story kind of takes a back seat to just like character and a certain kind of energy
Yeah.
being created visually, and that's something that I've really kind of grown to appreciate more and really am drawn to now. And I think what this film also does is when I really connect with it, it's in the moments that it is really kind of creating the space and the environment and the atmosphere in which Cléo exists, and in which they are exploring, like in which Varda is exploring her themes in the film. I think that was just something that I really enjoyed, was kind of being in this moment with a person in real time. Yeah, it just kind of created a very kind of unique experience of like connecting with a character where it's like, I'm along this hour and 30 minutes with you, like in real time. I'm not missing anything with you. And so I think it was kind of nice. I liked it.
Yeah, I agree. I think it works well on that front.
What do you, if I may,
please,
what do you know of and what do you feel are the themes and is the kind of the point of the film?
Yeah, so did a little bit of that segues nicely into some of the research that I've got together, which is that like the film has a very interesting kind of slice of life feel to it, right? Like not just in the time frame, the real time presentation of the story, but also in just the subject matter and the way that it's shot. And a lot of that comes from Agnès Varda as director. Varda, her background was as a photojournalist and then a documentarian.
Interesting.
That was her kind of whole angle. She originally wanted to be a museum curator, but decided to study photography instead. And then from there, that kind of leads into documentarian work, which then leads into some of her more narrative stuff, gets involved with the French New Wave. Her work predates the French New Wave. Like her first film is 1955. Followed by this is her sophomore effort in 1962. But like even her early work has a lot of kind of the core tenets of the movement. Additionally, I didn't know this until today. Freaking crazy. Did you know that she was married to Jacques Demy? Like Young Girls of Rochefort, Donkey Skin, Umbrellas of
I didn't know that. No.
Yeah, they were married. Freaking powerhouse couple of cinema.
When were they married? Is he one of the cameos in this?
I don't know if he shows up in this film. They got married this year. It was 1962 that they were married, and then he passed away in 1990. But yeah,
I know there's
for
quite a
30 years.
Few folks who show up in the silent film.
Yeah.
But
I don't know if he is amongst them. I don't think assume he would be, but yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah. Anyway, I had no idea because I was familiar with his work. I was familiar with her work. I had no idea that they were married. So.
Yeah.
Right. Crazy power couple right there. But yeah, so like all this to say that I think that her background adds a lot to the way the film is portrayed and the way that it's examining things. There's been a lot of really great writing done about this film, specifically about kind of just its examination of femininity and gaze and what it is to be seen as a woman and want to be seen and the times that you don't want to be seen, and like examining all of this stuff through a lot of very interesting elements, particularly its use of mirrors throughout the whole thing. There's a large mirror motif, which some of those shots, like you watch them and you just, anytime you see a mirror in cinema, you have to ask yourself where the camera is. And especially, mid-century cinema like this, there's some crazy mirror shots in this where I'm like, how did you not get the camera in that shot? Like there's there's certain movements that they have that blow my mind. They're like magic tricks. They're so interesting.
For sure.
That I love. But yeah, like I think the film thematically is a lot about this idea of perception of ourselves, perception of the way other people see us and how we want them to see us, and uses a lot of the character of Cléo and like her trappings and her environment to kind of, emphasize those themes, I would say.
Yeah.
What about you? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, those are things that I picked up on as well. In particular, for me, like mirror shots and, trying on all the hats and, but specifically like this kind of idea of, there's that line that she says where she says, everyone spoils me, but no one loves me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that as kind of tying into this theme of what it is to, of femininity and what it is to be Cleo as a woman in this situation of like, so many people want to have her and give her things and, look upon her and all of these things. But she clearly feels that no one is truly loving her in that way. Like, and there's so much within her, like when we hear her inner monologue and that sort of thing of like, or even other people's inner monologues of what they think of her. I feel that, and I haven't looked into this at all, so this is just kind of like my feelings from the film. But I think kind of this, it's being torn of like, I want to exist in other ways, but that doesn't mean that I don't want what people are giving me and what I have. But there's kind of this opening up for her in the face of death.
Totally.
Of kind of like grappling with like, oh, like I care so much. Like if I'm not beautiful, then I am dead. But then I don't know, like there's a lot there and I'm not doing a great job of explaining it. And honestly, I'm like, well, I don't really need to. You can just watch the film, and the film does a much better job of explaining all of it than I can.
Totally.
But that definitely was coming through, but especially that notion of people, and I think Antoine even says like, it seems like you're waiting for something, not someone. Yeah. Is that what he says? Or the inverse? I think it's that.
Yeah. Just something, not someone.
That, and then also like the being spoiled line really kind of felt like kind of indicator lines, if you will. Totally.
Thesis lines for sure.
Yeah.
I would agree. Yeah, I think that's kind of the general overview of themes.
If I may, because this is a show where we talk to one another, so I hope I can.
I suppose.
How does this film make you feel as you're watching it, and when it's over? What do you feel from this movie?
I feel...
Is there an ennui to it? Is there kind of, it ends on kind of a note of happiness, but also kind of ambiguity of kind of like, we don't really, what is this fleeting? Is this permanent?
Yeah. It's like, I find that the film, it makes me feel comforted in an odd way of just like, this is what it feels like to spiral in on your own anxieties, and be surrounded by people who are telling you, hey, this is out of your control. Like, there's nothing you can do about this.
Right.
So why let it completely consume you, right? Which is unhelpful advice when you're feeling anxious about something, because that you can't just switch it off. And so I find a sense of comfort watching this film, because it's like, oh, hey, like, people have been feeling this way for all of human history. I think sometimes there's a lot of voices going on in, a modern society that are like, oh, well, all of the woes we feel now are new challenges that nobody else has ever had to face. And it's phones and it's TikTok and it's overwhelming. We've never had access to this kind of information all the time. And those things are true. But also, like, watching films like this reminds me, it's like, yeah, but people have always felt this way. Like, it's always been something, right? Like, even during this film, like, there are moments where, like, you've got the students kind of doing their artistic protest in the street, and you've got the radio talking about the Algerian War and Kennedy and Khrushchev and, like, all of, like, the anxieties of what's going on in that time period that are far removed from what we're experiencing now, but, like, are still, they were anxieties then, right? Like, this is not anything new. So I do find it to be a little bit of a comforting watch in that regard of like, yeah, like, scary shit has always been happening, and it always will be happening.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good read. I like that.
Yeah.
For me, I think in relation to what you're talking about, I think genuinely kind of being alongside someone going through that especially gives it kind of an extra oomph of connecting. I don't know. I already kind of touched on that as well.
Yeah.
But just kind of like, I don't know. I was really moved by staying with this person as she went about her day after, while she's going through this kind of very anxious period, and we see some of her friends and they all kind of respond differently to her. And I was just very moved by that. Yeah, I did cry at a point in this film that we'll talk about in the summry, I think.
Okay, interesting.
Cast your votes now. What made Max cry? When did Max cry? Yeah, no.
Speaking of, should we get into summary?
Yeah, I think so. Thank you for sharing that.
Of course, thank you.
Yeah, let's dive in.
All right.
So, the opening tarot reading of the film, if I understand correctly, for a while it was cut out at a certain point, or it was altered?
That's what I understand, is that it was an addition depending on where it was screening at the time, and what cut was going around.
Right, and then with the Criterion release in the 90s, I think, or 2000s, they reinstated it, and I think it's incredible. I really wasn't expecting color at the top of this film, and particularly just like the tarot reading being in color almost gives it a more vivid omen. It gives it more power over Cleo almost, which is really, I think, visually an interesting choice of especially, for one, just like tarot cards are going to look great in color. They're not going to look quite as good in black and white, but I think specifically it being this more vivid message to her, I think kind of comes through to me. Is that kind of your understanding?
Absolutely.
Of it as well?
That's always been my read of it, is just, again, a visual oomph to show just the level of sway this is going to have on her for the rest of the film. It's a really bold choice, and I was very excited to hear your thoughts about it.
I really enjoyed it, and especially cutting back up to Cleo's face and the fortune teller's face, and they're in black and white, kind of clarifying it's just the reading, it's just the layout. I just thought this is a great way to start a movie, to the point that I'm like, more movies should just open with that. More movies should just open with a tarot reading for their character, setting the stakes.
Absolutely. Yeah, we gotta get it all laid out.
As far as exposition goes, I think a tarot reading is actually a really clever tool for that.
Totally, because I mean, it even it fully tips its hat to the fact that Cleo is eventually going to meet Antoine. There's some line about you'll meet a stranger who will offer you kindness, or I don't remember the exact line, but the movie's spelled out for you. Yeah. Even the final button of this scene when she talks to who I can assume is her husband in the other room about the tarot reading, everything comes true. It's all real, Yeah. Which is interesting.
Yeah, it's very interesting, and especially as introducing something to the audience of again, it's it's an interesting way to convey information to people without just outright saying it until the end of the scene. But for us to come to an understanding, I don't know, I just found it a really effective tool. I'm let's just have more information conveyed via because tarot is and I know this is the first thing that happens in the movie that we're really sticking to, but because it is such an interpretive moment in conversation, I just think that's a really interesting way to play with information and character reaction. If the goal of a good exposition would be what is the character's motivation in talking about this, rather than just giving direct information, what if they get something wrong? What does that mean for the character? I think it's just interesting. Anyway, I just think it's interesting. Just putting that out to everybody. But the tarot reading kind of reveals, again, there's an evil force in her life, and there's a doctor with a hazardous task, and she's going to meet a talkative young man in her future, and a change for the worse is about to happen in her life. And then they pull the death card, and although the fortune teller emphasizes that it can indicate a profound change in the person's life other than death itself, Cleo believes that she is doomed.
Yeah.
And then, like you said, there's kind of the button on it of the fortune teller going to her husband in the other room and being like, yeah, she's going to die.
Yeah, it's cancer. Yeah,
it's
she's
cancer.
Gonna die.
Yeah, she's going to die. So then, well, distraught, Cleo meets up with her maid.
And there's a moment right before this that I love where she's exiting the flat and going down the stairs, and as she goes down the stairs, it does the repetitive jump cut. It cuts back to her like 4 times in the same position, which is just, again, like very, the first like 5 minutes of this movie, like it is showing you fully that it's like, okay, this is a French New Wave film. We're playing with color, we're playing with form, we're playing with editing, and like using a jump cut to like emphasize the like fragmenting of this character's psyche of like, oh, it is all, everything is coming apart and everything is, it's like a record skipping in on itself over and over again, which I love that moment.
Oh yeah. Thank you for pointing that out. That's also when she stops to look at herself in the mirror as well, right? For the first time. It's the infinity mirror.
It won't be the last.
Oh.
Yeah.
Whoa. And she, thinks of her beauty and is like, I think that's when she has the thought of like, and when I'm no longer beautiful, I will be dead, so it won't matter.
Yeah.
And like,
yeah. She's like, oh, at least I'm beautiful, so that means I'm healthy,
Right.
Like beauty is health is this idea.
Right. Yeah. And then she meets up with her maid, Anjali, at a cafe and recounts the results of the tarot card reading. She cries. The owner of the cafe gives her coffee to calm down. It kind of cracks me up how quickly Angela is like, she's like
the inner monologue.
Anyway. Yeah. Like her
I love the inner voice where she's like, God, what a drama queen. Like,
yeah. But then also she just starts talking about somebody else in her life who had a horrible death or accident, and like the owner is there and he's like listening to the story. And then Cleo is not there. And I thought this was really interesting how kind of the editing together of the other couple that Cleo is kind of overhearing. And again, just kind of an interesting way to create that composition by literally just having a different shot overlaid that she's looking to, right? Was I?
Yeah, totally.
Okay, good. Because for a second I was like, is there just like a weird line in the set that I'm not? But yeah, I thought it was kind of interesting.
I think it's a bit of both. They have the line in the set, but I think they also do overlay a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. So cafe, there it is. They go shopping. Yeah. Cleo wants to buy a hat. She ends up with a kind of a Russian winter hat that I quite enjoyed.
Yeah, it's a good one.
That sequence is interesting because it is her like. But what's your read on the hat?
Well, it's interesting. I like that scene because again, it's it's exposition. We learn that Cleo is a singer. We learn that she is moderately famous. Enough that the hat shot over knows her by her voice, but not by her looks, right? She doesn't recognize her, but when she hears the name, she's like, I thought it might be you, right?
Right.
So we get that, but like the hat being this big, thick winter hat, kind of portends what's coming later, where like she has her like super frilly white ridiculous outfit that she wears at home, and then she changes into black, like she's literally mourning her own death already. And it feels like the hat is like the first step of that, of like, oh, I will get this thick black hat because I'm in mourning,
Right. Yeah, and it's kind of like winter, kind of like the cold of, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I just thought that sequence was...
We also see that her maid feeds into the superstitions as well. Like she's like, oh, you can't, you can't get something new on a Tuesday. You can't carry something new on a Tuesday.
Have it shipped to your house.
Yeah.
Which I do like later when Cleo is like, I'm doing this to spite my maid, basically.
It's really funny.
She's like, I'm just carrying this hat with me. Yeah, so hat sequence. She wants to wear the hat home. Like we said, don't wear something new on a Tuesday.
Yeah.
And now I know I'm never going to do that. I'm going to be very careful not to do that. And they take a taxi home in time for her rehearsal. And I could have sat there forever. Like, I don't know, something about, I don't know what it is, because it's not even like it was a really pleasant ride. Like, we're hearing the radio talk about distant wars and stuff, but like, I especially liked the approach of revealing the driver is a woman, of like, they pull in and the camera like kind of trucks to the left and then comes back as they drive forward. But I don't know, something about just sitting there listening to it. I just love when a movie's like, we're just going to sit in a car and listen to a radio for a bit.
Yeah, that's nice.
It was nice. And just kind of the real time traveling through this space. Again, just kind of creating the environment, creating the atmosphere in which this person exists.
It also kind of like plants an extra seed of anxiety of, we hear the taxi drivers, you know, her experience, like, oh yeah, I was attacked one time, you know, they had some kids who weren't going to pay their fare, and then they, you know, assaulted me, and I got to my radio, and, you know, instantly 2 other people came, which was great. But like it sets the stage of like, oh, this is a world where like bad things can and do happen to women constantly. And like, not only do we have this death anxiety hanging over Cleo, there is kind of like, there's this kind of subtextual flavor going on under the whole thing now, of like, once you hear that, anytime Cleo is alone and anytime she's getting these really leering, like full head turn looks from people as she goes, you're like, there's just this underlying anxiety of like, you know, you wonder, because you're like, okay, she's worried about the cancer this whole time, but subconsciously we as audience members are like, well, are there other dangers to Cleo in being a woman and being perceived, you know, just based off of this experience we hear from the cab driver?
Right. Yeah. Wow.
Which again doesn't go anywhere. But like, it's interesting.
I hope it didn't seem like I was like, I really enjoyed hearing about that attack on the cab.
No. I know exactly what you're talking about, like the cab drive itself. Absolutely.
Yeah, and the real time of it. But I do think I hadn't really fully considered that aspect of like, yeah, this is all setting up kind of this sense of danger. And then later when she's like, no, I'd rather be alone. And then she's,
but to your point though, like the film is playing around very deliberately with a sense of ease and a sense of danger, because 3/4 of that scene is vibey as hell. It is just this kind of like this ride, and you get to hear from her experiences, and like, you know, she's like, oh, this seems like it'd be like a tough job, and she's like, no, you get used to it, like, you know, very conversational.
Yeah, they're like, are you scared? And she's like, no, not really.
No, like, I can handle myself
once, but I'm fine.
Yeah, I'm fine. Yeah, and like, so that's the thing, is that like, to your point, it is both of those things. It is like the film itself is letting you vibe in black and white Paris and look at a gorgeous place following a beautiful person, and also is talking about the anxieties of everyday life and the constant threat of death,
which is kind of exactly what Cleo is grappling with, right?
Totally.
It's this notion of like, yeah, okay, yeah, I like that. There's kind of yes, yes. She goes to her apartment and she wears the big white frilly dress. She cannot breathe, and her maid tells her to do some exercise. She hangs out.
Yeah,
thought that was kind of,
her like liminal non-space loft apartment is so funny to me. Just like white on white, like just looks like, out of any place in the film, looks the most like a set.
Yeah.
Very intentionally, you know, it's just like this other world, like you have to go up to get to her. Like it's this weird nether space she exists in, you know?
Right. Which kind of also builds to her sense of beauty and kind of like, right? Would you say that ties into everything as well?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Absolutely. Like, it is this, there's a theme around like porcelain as a color in this film, like, you know, like there's
kind of a delicate expected ease, and
totally,
I don't want to say purity because I hate that, but like,
right,
you know what I mean, like there's kind of this elegance, expected elegance, I should say. And then like you said, she puts on the black dress and goes out, and from there other things. But yeah, again, like, you know, Cleo's lover coming over and the maid being like, don't let him make his men hate illness. Don't let him know that you're ill.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, okay, another
show
rule,
weakness. Yep.
Another rule, another superstition, another, kind of weight upon her by nature of existing as she does. And he comes over and he's I thought it was funny that he's very busy.
Yeah.
And he's just like,
just a busy guy.
I thought I'd just come and stop by and then I have to get out of here. He only has time to stop by for a kiss. Can't go on vacation. Asks her if she's ill. She replies that she is, but he does not take her seriously.
Yeah.
Which is kind of like a funny reversal of what the maid says of like, they don't, it's like, I don't even think he's going to even care or be aware of that.
Yeah.
Like, and then he leaves and then Parker, I imagine these are your favorite guys.
I love these guys. I love these guys.
These guys come in and a new energy has arrived. And obviously they're not the best.
Sure.
They're a little mean.
Yeah.
But
like, I don't know. Like, it reads to me, and maybe this is giving them too much credit, but like, it feels good-natured. It feels like, well, let's cheer you up. You're having a bad time. We'll put on this whole thing. And like, she's very overreactive to everything. And so I think that in context puts some of their shenanigans, she doesn't appreciate them, but like, I don't think that they're ill-intended.
I guess the only thing when they're really mean is when like towards the end when they're like, I don't even know, are you talented? Like, yeah. you're spoiled, like yeah. But
which,
like,
to be fair, if I had somebody who was like just going off the way she does, I'd probably be like, all right, well, calm down.
You'd be a little short with them. Yeah, sure. But they come in pretending to be doctors, which is, it's kind of funny. But it's not funny.
Also, the main guy, out of the two, the guy at the piano, he's the composer of the film.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Michel Legrand.
He also composed for Umbrellas at Cherbourg?
I believe so. Yeah. Good actor. He's really good.
He is. Oh, you mean, the guy who exists in our group of men as well?
Yeah.
Do you just like him because he looks like you?
Absolutely. Obviously. No, it was so funny, like watching him walk in and just like the hairstyle and the frames he's wearing on his glasses and like just the outfit. I was like, I teach this guy at my school. Like, he's one of my students. I've seen this guy. I see this guy every day.
Cafe. You'd see him at a coffee shop for sure.
Absolutely.
Which I guess was that your review as well on Letterboxd? Okay. These guys are great though. They play some songs.
This sequence has my favorite shot in the movie. Which is when they're going through trying all these different songs and he's like, hey, I've got this one. And so she actually starts singing it and the camera, it's like a oneer. It starts on the kind of far right-hand side, looking at him in profile and her on the other side of the piano. And it dollies around in a wide arc and then gets close. And the way they've set up the space, like the first time I watched it, I had to go back and like double check. Is like, where did the handoff happen? Because suddenly it's just her in a black void. Like it's just her and she's lit and just like, there's nothing around her. And you're like, when did that happen? And it's the set dressing. There's a giant black curtain behind her. Yeah. And when we go from that angle and eventually when we push in, it's so slow that you don't pick up on it the first time. And then suddenly you notice we're in like a non-space. She's just in darkness.
Which also goes along with she's singing along to the piano. And then at around that same shift, the full orchestra comes in and she is singing it. And that's when I cried, Parker.
Yeah, it's a good moment.
Because something about her she turns to camera and is singing directly forward.
Yeah.
With the black void behind her and the full orchestra behind her. And it just got me. I don't know what happened.
It's a beautiful little moment.
It is. And it just really got me. And her mood darkens. And they, and then she
like, I don't want to sing sad songs. I don't want to.
Right. She's like, you're making fun of this. And they're like, no. But she did like the one that was like, and you play this and I play this. And I liked how committed that guy was to continuing to sing even after the piano had stopped, because she interrupts the piano player and he's just like still going strong to showcase the song. Yeah. It's like that little guy. Yeah.
That guy, he's proud of his lyrics.
Classic
composer. I read them as like composer and lyricist,
Yep. Yeah,
Yeah.
I was gonna say, I was like, there's always just two guys come in with a piano. One of them's tall and kind of fun, and the other one's shorter and kind of like, ooh, It's great. I don't know if that actually has any like evidence in other movies, but it feels like that's how
it feels. It feels right.
She changes into her black dress, puts on her hat.
Yep.
She
Takes off her
leaves.
wig. She has like this
Takes off-
ornate kind
Oh.
of beehive thing,
And
she like tears it off and leaves
that's
it.
such a fun. That's so fun.
Mhm.
Like, I really got it. I really enjoyed that of kind of just changing her look completely.
Totally, and like thematically, just another stripping away of that
Right.
kind of porcelain layer, right?
Exactly.
Like it's like, okay, we are one step closer to the real person,
Right. Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
great.
It's great. She heads out, and her maid is like, "Do you want me to come with you?" And she goes, "No, I want to be alone." She heads out. She sees a street performer swallowing frogs.
And projectile vomiting.
Yeah, and then she very reasonably runs away.
Gross.
And I would be like, yeah, it was disgusting.
Yeah.
We watch him put a lot of frogs in his
It's a
mouth.
lot of frogs in that mouth,
Because
man.
they do kind of the editing jumping around
Yeah.
in continuity, and he just seems like he just keeps putting them in
keeps
his
doing
mouth.
it.
And I was
Yeah.
like, stop it. I
Please
was relieved when I was like, Cleo, get me out of here.
get the fuck out of there.
We haven't mentioned yet chapter titles.
Oh yeah.
Chapter titles. It's usually, from this time to this time.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Any further thoughts on that?
Not especially. Just it's an interesting demarcation of time.
It is. It doesn't show up all the time.
It kind of creates like an episode structure. Like it's like
It
every chapter is its own little vignette in an
Yeah,
interesting
and
way.
usually they're like 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Like they're
Yeah.
pretty short until that last one, which I think is like 15 or 10.
It's longer.
Yeah. She goes to a cafe. She plays one of her songs at a jukebox in the cafe and watches if other people around react to it, and no one does.
Nobody does. She gets sad about that.
She leaves in a hurry, which that's so real.
That's some real shit.
That's so real. Oh, we forgot to mention in the taxi they play one of her songs, and she's like,
Yes. Turn it off.
I don't want to
She's
hear
like,
this.
I wish we'd only did like one demo. I wish we'd done it over.
Right.
Yeah.
She then goes to a sculpting studio to visit her old friend Dorothy, who is modeling nude for a class of sculptors. This movie's very French.
Very. Indeed.
Naked woman modeling.
Black and white.
Black and white.
Paris.
Frogs in the mouth.
Frogs in the mouth.
I don't know. Is that something French? I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But
I read
again,
that
tying
in
back
French.
into it, like, the entire movie's theme of how are you perceived as a feminine
Right.
person? How
Right.
how do you engage in being perceived in femininity? And like they talk about that where she's like, I don't know how you do that. And she's like, it's not me. Like it's not
Right.
me that they're sculpting. It's a shape. It's contours. It's an idea. I get paid for it. Like it doesn't matter. Like
Yeah.
nothing like, she's, it's an interesting conversation because it doesn't seem like she's like poo-pooing the artist, but she's just like, no, that isn't me. It's an idea of me. It's an interpretation of me. Like, I don't feel
Right.
vulnerable in there.
She says something really interesting about her relationship with her body as well, doesn't she?
Yeah, there's particular phrasing that's escaping me, but
Yeah. That conversation is very interesting. Because that's after the modeling session is over. It's here. Dorothy claims that her body makes her happy, not proud.
yes, there it
I
is.
thought that was very interesting.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that.
I like that sentiment.
Dorothy picks up a package for her friend who lent her his car to take it to the cinema where he works. And we go to the cinema. But on the way, real quick, Cleo tells Dorothy that she's waiting for her test results and afraid of being terminally ill. So they have that conversation.
Yep.
And Dorothy's very much like, oh, that's awful. And then they go to the cinema. Like that's basically the conversation.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
She's just like, that's terrible.
She's like, yeah, let me know how that goes. But like, again,
Yeah.
it's like Cleo is surrounded by people who are trying to put this all in context for her, and she's
Yeah.
refusing to listen. Whereas she's like, hey, like, at first she's like, oh my God, like, are you okay? And she's like, well, I'm waiting on the test results. She's like, oh, well then like you could be fine. And she's
Right.
like, yeah, but I'm probably not. She's like, well, yeah, but like, let's like, there's a lot of like people trying to point out the logical fallacies of just assuming that she has cancer and is going to die and being like, you don't even know yet. Like, just, I understand this is scary, but like, take a deep breath,
Right. Parker, I wish you'd been there to be friends with Cleo, because you're very good at that.
Thanks. one of the skills I've cultivated over the years.
Got to start building Parker up again. I've been too
shucks.
mean on the podcast.
Been too mean for too long. It's like you don't
I
even
wish
like
you
me.
were in the movie. And that's just what I go to every week. Last week in Love and Basketball, I'm like, I wish you'd been in the movie. You would have been a better love interest then. We don't need to keep talking about Love and Basketball. It's fine. This is Cleo from 5 to 7.
Indeed.
So we're going to stay within that time.
We're gonna stay here.
We're not going to talk about later in the world when the events of Love and Basketball happen. Anyway, whatever.
Anyway.
At the cinema, they watch a silent comedy film from the projection booth featuring Jean-Luc Godard and Anna Karina.
Mm-hmm.
That's fun.
Yeah. What do you make of the film?
Well,
The silent film.
Well, now hold on.
Now, hold on.
He puts on the sunglasses. He doesn't know who's who.
Whoa.
That's what I make of the film.
There you go.
My main reaction to the film, and I'll be curious to hear your thoughts on it, but my main reaction to it is just, it really points out how different filmmaking is in the new era. Mm-hmm. Of like, we watch this silent film, because you go, oh, it's all black and white. Someone might say that. Mm-hmm. But you watch this and then you return to Cleo from 5 to 7 after watching the silent film, and it's kind of like, oh yeah, wow, like I don't know, I thought that was really interesting. What is your 40 years think of what do you make of the silent film?
Similar things. Like, it's an interesting juxtaposition of how cinema has advanced in the 40 years since like the height of the silent era in the 20s, and also just it's I always love like movies within movies. Like, anytime like in a film we see a play performance or another film or anything like that, even stuff like the storybook segments in like Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, right? Like, anything that's like a smaller piece inside of a larger piece is always interesting to me thematically, and this one's no exception to that. It's essentially what I was just talking about, right? It is this, the whole film is about like, oh, things look bad when you look through them through a lens of dour darkness, right? Like, if you are looking through dark sunglasses, things will appear darker than they actually are, right? Like, and that's the point of the movie, right? Is that it's like, oh yeah, like, yes, we get to the end and we find out the news, which we won't spoil, we'll get there eventually, but like, it is not as dire as she has been anticipating this entire time, right? And that's kind of what this little silent film, despite it being a slapstick silent comedy, it's riffing on the same ideas, It
is. Yeah, well, I thought that I was way more concise when I said he put on sunglasses, he doesn't know what things are anymore. You're absolutely right. I feel that I was way more concise.
I think you were better. Yeah, I should have just. Yeah, I'll shut up now.
I'm already being mean again.
Oh, he's back.
Parker, I wish you'd made the silent film in the movie.
No, it's more fun when you're mean.
I wish you were Jean-Luc Godard in the movie.
It does, like, it's a good litmus test of like how film bro somebody is who you're talking to is whether the first thing they say about this movie is like, did you know Jean-Luc Godard's in that movie? That's when you know. You're like, okay, you didn't pass the sniff test.
But what else is about it? Come on, man.
But what else is there?
Well, the only thing we're talking about is how there's a man in it. Oh.
Oh, okay. See, I bring that up as a joke, but I've talked to people who like that has been like, this movie comes up and that's the first thing they say. No. And I'm like, yeah. And I'm like, yeah, I've met real people who do that. And I'm like, whoa. That tells me a lot about you as a person.
Was it Will?
Yeah, it was Will.
Oh,
it was totally
no.
Will. Oh, no. He's not here to defend himself.
No.
I can slander as much as I want.
No, we love Will.
We love Will.
We love Will. And he would never say that.
We love you, Will.
He probably has something very interesting to say about this film.
Absolutely. He always does.
He always does. In the film, yeah, whatever. Okay. He takes off his sunglasses, realizes it was only his dark glasses which made the events appear inside. Yeah, whatever. Okay. Well, Parker covered it. He covered it. We don't need it in the sun.
I got this.
Leaving the cinema, Cleo accidentally breaks a mirror. This shot I love of her looking at the broken mirror on the ground and her eye in the mirror.
It's really cool.
It's great.
Good shot.
It's really good. And she's like, oh, no. Like, that's an omen of I'm going to die.
Yeah.
And Dorothy's like, you know. And then they pass by a cafe learning that a man was killed there. And she's like, there it is. That's...
Yeah. And I like their exchange where like Dorothy explains that away. She's like, oh, that was the Dark Omen. That was the mirror shattering. And she's like, but you don't believe in that stuff. She's like, no, but you do.
Right.
And just like, it's a nice little exchange of like what friendship is like when you have different belief systems and superstitions. Like, look, I don't think this means anything, but clearly this is affecting you. So like, yeah, I'll put some stock in this with you because you're my friend and I care about you.
Yeah.
Just I like that little exchange.
Definitely. Dorothy is she the best friend of Cleo in the movie?
I'd say so.
Well, we have one more guy.
Yeah. One more dude.
One more dude. Cleo gives Dorothy the hat.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's interesting.
Yeah.
Especially in talking about the hat as initial kind of entry of like, she's going to be thinking about this. It's going to hang over her head.
Yeah.
Would you say it's fair to read hat as
totally,
kind of
100%.
giving the hat away to her is kind of like
letting go of it a little bit.
Letting go of it a little bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. I'm
Absolutely.
glad I wasn't an idiot when I...
Congratulations, Max. You get to keep your film degree.
Yes! Parker's a professor. He can revoke mine at any time.
I can do it, and I will.
No. That's why the vibes on the show are so weird sometimes, where it feels like I'm constantly trying to prove myself to Parker. It's because he's a professor. He could take my degree away.
I could take his degree away right now.
Don't.
Don't.
No, don't.
Don't.
No, don't.
Throwing it all the way back.
Night of the Hunter. Okay, so Cleo has the taxi driver take her to Parc Montsouris. In the park, Antoine, a soldier on leave from the Algerian War. It was foreshadowed. Addresses Cleo and tells her that June 21st is the longest day of the year. Mm-hmm. It's true, he did say that.
I like that, like, this scene starts, and again, because of the interactions we've had, because like there have been moments like early on in the film, like when she walks out and is going down the street after the tarot reading, like she keeps getting bothered by men who are like, hey, you wanna buy this dress? One of them's like, can I buy you a drink when she's at the cafe? Like men keep coming up trying to talk to her and she ignores them. And so when we meet Antoine, we're like, oh, okay, this is just another one of those dudes, dude who can't let a woman be alone in a park.
Yeah, I fully was just like, all right, get out of here, buddy. And then he didn't leave.
Then he didn't leave.
But they kept saying he was about to.
Mm-hmm.
No. During their conversation, she tells him that her real name is Florence. Mm-hmm. She's afraid of her illness, and he's like, yeah, I like Florence better. Yeah. And then he says, like, Cleo sounds silly. Or whatever. He's got some interesting takes. I don't actually have that hot of a take on Antoine. I don't know why I'm like trying to character assassinate him. He's a sensitive guy, and he encourages her to use her real name. He reflects on the meaninglessness of dying in war. He asks her to accompany him to the train station because he doesn't have anybody. He's like, and I don't want it to seem like I'm just going back, right?
Well, I like too that like it's kind of an olive branch he offers to her first, because she's like, oh, I have these test results, I'm terrified. He's like, well, I'll go with you. With you. And she's like, I don't know about that. He's like, hey, let's do each other a favor. I'll go with you so that you're not alone, and then you can see me off so that I don't look like a loser, Right. Like it seems like kind of a very kind way of like letting her give herself permission to like rely on somebody else, because like, well, hey, you'll do something for me too,
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely. Despite my best attempts, Antoine does seem to be a stand-up guy.
He seems like a chill dude.
Yeah, so then they get on a bus and they take the bus for a long time. Like, again, real time on a bus ride, kind of talking about everything. And then, they kind of, it's basically they get to the hospital. Like, is there anything in that conversation on the bus that you want to mention specifically?
Not anything specific, just like, again, it is nice. It is just nice to have a male presence in this film that isn't like having caveats around it, Like even the composers who I have a fun time with, like you said, like they kind of talk down to her by the end of it and kind of, are not taking her seriously in any of this. And it's just nice to have a dude who's just like, yeah, that sounds terrifying. Like, do you want me to go with you? Like that, you shouldn't be alone when you get that news. Like, it's just nice. It's just a nice change of pace from what the rest of the film has been.
Definitely. Yeah.
And it's nice to see her get to relax a little bit.
And it's interesting to have, I mean, I guess it's, it was foretold at the top of the movie, but it is interesting to have, we were just really jazzed about Dorothy as a friend, but like she had to run off and do her own thing. And this is this is the longest chapter. So this is the most amount of time, other than like, obviously she spends a lot of time with her maid, but like that relationship is just the maid being like, don't do that. What are you doing?
Totally.
Do this. What are you doing? And it's interesting that the only person in the film to really give her the time of day and to just kind of sit with her in it is Antoine, this man that she didn't know.
Yeah.
Right? And
Kindness of strangers.
I think that's kind of interesting that we end it here of like, she has all these people in her life, including a lover, including these, these composers who work with her on her music, her maid, her friend. And it is this man who is also like clearly afraid of dying in war. He's like also aware of what's at stake for him. And it almost feels like it's these two people who are just kind of both burdened by the anxiety of dying and kind of thinking about, for him, it's about the meaninglessness of dying in war. And for her, it's like, I think she's also grappling with a bit of meaninglessness.
Yeah. She's like, I didn't do anything to deserve this.
Right. And like everything in her life, like, she's kind of just taking it into account a bit more. And so I do think that's very interesting.
I like this last chapter quite a bit too, because like, and this is going to sound mean-spirited, and I don't mean it to come across that way, but like, it gives us a chance to like, let Cleo endear herself to the audience a bit more. Because like, up to this point, she's been kind of abrasive to the viewer to watch because it's just like, she is very spoiled and she acknowledges that, but like acknowledging that doesn't like absolve her of that. And like being very vapid and very vain. And like, those are qualities that we as a viewer, have a harder time latching onto and like being, rah, rah. And so I like the fact that like by the end, we've stripped the artifice away and we just get to see her as like a person. And I like her as a person a lot more than I like her as an object, which is what she's trying to be the entire first half.
Right. That's very interesting. Wow, I really like that, Parker. I really like how you put that.
Thanks. That was right off the cuff. I felt good about that. That was nice.
No, I liked that a lot. That's very nice. Like, and interesting as like, I'm just going to leave it at that. I'm not even going to try and build off of that because I like her more as a person than I do as an object, which is what she's trying to be in the first half, which is what's expected of her.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Again, no, everyone spoils her. No one loves her. They all just want to kind of like have her as object in life of sorts. Yeah. To her maid, she is someone that she serves and pays her. Right.
Yeah. She's employer.
Right. And she's an employer. To her composers, she is
a client,
essentially. Client. Yeah. Kind of like, to her lover, she is a woman, parentheses, objectified.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would say, in the truest sense of like objectified. Yeah. But we don't even really see that much. But again, all of these people, she's just trying to, she's grappling with the nature of being.
Yeah. And it is like the shift does occur when we meet Dorothy at like the halfway point. And that's why I said like the first half. The second half, she's surrounded by people who start engaging with her more as a person as she starts allowing herself to be more of a person. And I just think it all kind of coalesces very nicely here in the finale.
Yeah. Wow. If I was a professor, I'd give you an A.
Wow, thanks.
For Antoine. They go to the hospital. They find that the doctor has already left. So they sit on a bench. And, she's feeling very unsure. She's feeling very nervous. And he rolls by in his car.
Well, she has an interesting moment of kind of accepting right before that, though. Like, she is nervous, but then she's like, hey, like, there's nothing I can do about this. Like, I'll talk. I'll see him when I see him. She has a moment of, like, finally grounding herself and being like, okay, it sucks, and I wish I could find out today, but seems like I can't, so I guess I'll try again later on.
Yes. Thank you for bringing that up. I'd forgotten about that.
Yeah.
The doctor rolls by in his car, and I do love how offhand he's like, "Oh, great."
He's so casual about it.
Yeah, and like that's like the perfect note for this of just like,
Mhm.
"Oh yeah, 2 months of treatment should be fine.
Yeah.
I'll see you." He leaves.
Right, which is like crazy to be like, yeah, you have cancer, but like
Yeah.
the way that it is presented to us is so
He doesn't even
flippant
say
isn't the right word. It's
cancer.
just he's just like, oh
says-
yeah, you'll have some radiology for 2 months and it'll clear itself up.
Yeah, it's a focus on the resolution of it rather than
Yeah.
the thing, which is something that she hasn't been able to focus on at all.
Totally.
He doesn't address the hazard of it at all, and he just offers the solution.
Yeah, here's
That's all
here's
he
the
sees
fix.
it as, right? And
Yeah.
that's something that she hasn't been able to really see or accept the entire day, or for the last 2 hours. And then it's really interesting how they play it from here, of how Varda plays it from here. I keep using they. It's like, yeah, I mean, a team of people made this, but
Sure. Yeah.
But they kind of get up and they walk along, and he's like, "Oh, I hate to leave you now, and I'd like to be with you." She's like, "You are.
Yeah.
Right now, you are."
Mm-hmm.
And she says, "My fear seems to be gone. I think I'm happy."
Mm-hmm.
And they smile at each other, and that's it.
Yeah, they walk together and they smile. Interestingly enough, you can see it in the final cut of the film. That last shot, you can see the dolly track on the ground that they're using.
Really?
And Varda was like distraught over this. She was like, she begged the producers, like, "Can we please do pickups? Like, I want to fix this." So they did. They paid for pickups. They got pickups. And ultimately, she was like, nothing matches the emotionality of that first one, like the one that we had. Like, we just it's. And so she's like, forgo the dolly track. It's fine. Like, and to be fair, the first time I watched it, I didn't even notice it. Like, I'm just locked in on the faces,
Yeah, I didn't notice it all.
But I love that like they tried it several other times where you couldn't see it, and she's like, "There's just something about that one that we had, just something in their faces that we're not capturing again. I think we're going to use that one."
Wow.
Which I think is good, because I do like, there's a lot of really great emotionality to their faces in that final shot that I like quite a bit.
And that's the movie,
and I like that they don't kiss. It looks like it looks like they want to so bad, and like you feel that, but I'm so glad that they don't.
I'm really glad that they don't.
Yeah.
It's just nice.
It's nice.
Yeah. And that's Cléo from 5 to 7.
Yeah.
From 7 to 8, who knows?
Who knows?
Who knows? Thanks for bringing this to the show, Parker.
Yeah, I'm glad you had a good time with it.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I had a nice time.
All right.
Any thoughts before criteria?
Oh, I will just say, we said it at the top of the episode before we started recording, but for anybody who is rushing to the comments, who's gonna yes and us, we all know the film ends at 6:30. It's not actually 5 to 7. 5 to 7 is a turn of phrase in French culture about the period of time after work before your evening starts.
Yes.
That's the reason for the title. I don't need didactic film bro asshole. Actually, because I'm tired of it. I don't want to see it anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'll leave it at that.
And that's
what about you? Any thoughts before criteria?
As well.
Indeed.
Don't any film bro assholes raising their hand saying, "I'm actually."
Everybody shut up! Everybody shut up!
Saying that to your students. I don't think I have any other thoughts. It's really nice. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed spending time with Cléo. I thought the theming was very effective and just well realized.
Yeah,
I guess what I have to say would apply to criteria.
Okay.
Fun fact: Agnès Varda was nominated for the Palme d'Or in 1960, right? For this,
yeah, and then received I think the film was, and then she received an honorary Palme d'Or in like 2015 as like a lifetime achievement.
Okay, cool, gotcha. And yeah, okay, great.
Yeah. Martin Scorsese has referred to her as like, one of the gods of cinema. Like he adores Varda.
Great.
Which makes a lot of sense.
I saw this somehow this entered my brain. This is the second highest rated, or like number 2 on the BBC's list of like top films directed by women.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's number 2. Do we know what number 1 is?
I don't. I should have. I saw that factoid, and I didn't have time to follow up on number 1.
I'm searching. Mainly, I'm searching. Does this appear on Sight and Sound?
It's a good
the origin
question.
of this podcast.
Yeah.
We really got to get back to that.
We really got to get back in there.
It's been long enough. For those not in the know, this show started because in 2022, Sight and Sound released their new list of. They polled, directors and critics and creatives and filmmakers and. Let's see here.
Okay, so I found it. So in 2019, Cléo from 5 to 7 was voted the second greatest film directed by a woman, behind only Jane Campion's The Piano. In a BBC poll of 368 film experts in 84 countries.
Interesting.
It first appeared on the Sight and Sound list in 2002 at 289th place. It rose to number 207 in the 2012 critics poll, and the 2020 poll it reached number 14.
So it's number 14 on the Sight and Sound list.
It is indeed.
It is,
making it the third highest ranking film directed by a woman on the list, after Claire Denise Beautreville and Jean Diamant.
Great.
At number 1.
Yeah, this is interesting. It's at 14, right above The Searchers, and right below Rules of the Game. Renoir's.
Okay, yeah.
Oh man, Sight and Sound list goes hard. Sorry.
It's a good list.
Sorry, I'm like, whoa.
Whoa.
Ooh, Meshes of the Afternoon is number 16.
I love Meshes of the Afternoon so much.
Me too.
Good movie.
Sorry,
good movie.
What was that? What did you say? Meshes of
good
the Afternoon.
Movie.
Never heard of it. No. We've heard of it.
You can't reference real light bits.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay, great.
Okay, so historical and technical relevance. I mean, it is a pillar of the French New Wave. Like it is taught in film schools around the world. It's a big part of film history.
It is 11 slots below Citizen Kane on the Sight and Sound list.
Okay.
Not that needs to mean anything, but it is one of the pillars. Big one. I mean, I'd be fine giving it to it. It's so rare that we have a movie that's close to Kane's level, but let's talk about it.
Based on how I'm feeling about other spots, I think we can give it to Cléo on this one. I think there is interesting stuff going on here as far as like, it is comparable to Kane in terms of being one of the films that defines an entire movement of cinema.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like typically we'd apply the the Spider-Verse rule here.
Yeah.
which is to say, it was developed in our episode on Puss in Boots' Last Wish. The Spider-Verse rule states that film that started thing deserves more credit than film that came after. But French New Wave is such a movement-based thing rather than one film changing the game.
Right.
That
like if you wanted to pull that argument, maybe you'd point to Breathless, which I think is like 2 years before this. But I agree. I think that the French New Wave as a movement is broad enough within a time period that I think this is still one of the texts.
And it's Agnès Varda.
Yeah.
It's her sophomore outing, but it established her as one of the greats.
Totally.
I feel, it plays a huge role in her continued career, I'd say, and that's worth something.
Totally. I would heartily agree with you in that regard.
Hardly agree with me.
Heartily.
Okay, well let's give it to Cléo.
Okay, Cléo gets the point.
Why not?
Yeah. How well is this doing what it's trying to do?
I think it's doing it very well.
I'd say so.
I'd say so. I mean, I can't really think of any faults in the movie. It's
No, like I think it is. Achieving its pontification on gaze and femininity and perception very well.
Yeah. It's an hour and 30.
Hey, yeah.
It sticks to the time.
90.
It sticks to the time frame.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's doing what it's trying to do very well. Do we know anything about Agnès Varda's feelings on this as a feminist film?
I couldn't find any specific
something that we touch in on every time.
Yeah, so something that adds to that. The closest I found is that like the Criterion essay points pretty directly to like this being very intentionally like a documentarian's expression of, you know, a woman in context of her society. So like,
right.
I couldn't find anything about feminism specifically, but I'll see.
We couldn't find any.
You
there was no
talk
quote.
About the next. Yeah, you talk about the next bit, and I'll see if I can find anything about what Agnès has said about feminism.
Great. The next bit, as in the next criteria.
Yeah, next bit
Are
of
we
criteria.
there? Okay. I think this is doing what it's trying to do very well. Do I think this is doing what it's trying to do better than Citizen Kane? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I think so. I think maybe equal to.
Mm-hmm.
I think that what this film is doing here, as far as the use of, like Parker referred to earlier, you know, the repetition of that cut early in the film to show kind of a stuntedness, a shattering of the psyche, kind of like a, you know, being caught by this, I think is very good. So I think it's using the methods of its form really well. I think that I could give this to Cléo as well.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting.
Okay, so very interesting stuff. So the first thing that comes up is a quote from Agnès Varda saying, quote, "The first feminist gesture is to say, okay, they're looking at me, but I'm looking at them. The act of deciding to look, of deciding that the world is not defined by how people see me, but how I see them." So seems pretty strong in her feelings about feminism. Another one, you know, that one seems to be pretty easily corroborated. This one is one of those that like maybe she didn't say this, but I'm not digging super deep, but it's still a good quote. Quote, "I wanted to speak strongly about feminism in my life since it's been a struggle."
Okay.
Another one, "I think I was a feminist before being born. I have a feminist chromosome somewhere." So yeah, very
great.
Kind of in direct contrast to a lot of the other female filmmakers we've covered.
Female filmmakers who are very hesitant to have their film, what it would seem, is boxed in by the label of feminist.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes that's influenced by, you know, trying to avoid political blacklisting of their film or them. But that's interesting. Okay, thanks for
I really do love
that.
this. Yeah, I really do love this quote about looking, especially in context of this film. That's very, very intriguing.
That feels very tied to this.
Yeah.
This movie is about kind of, it feels related to looking at. Very interesting. Would you say this is doing what it's trying to do better than Citizen Kane?
They're pretty close. Like it's splitting hairs for me a bit, but like, yeah, I think I'd give the point to Cléo.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah, right.
All right. And do you like it? We already kind of talked about how it makes us feel. But
yeah, I do like it. Falling back on the thing I always fall back on, which is like, how often am I watching this? Probably the same as Kane. I'm not popping this in once a year, you know, but like I enjoy revisiting when I get the chance to. I do like it's very close for me in a lot of ways. I think I prefer this ever so slightly. You know, if we're going just off of my ratings, I think I gave this 4, and Citizen Kane is still a 3.5 for me. What about you?
Yeah, I could see myself revisiting this. Not regularly, but you know, a decent amount. I really like. Again, I really like the I don't know. I really enjoyed being in this scene with her and being in this atmosphere with her, you know, along with the danger and the ease of everything.
Totally.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I could revisit this soon. Like I could see that, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I do I like this more than Citizen Kane?
Mm.
It doesn't really matter what I say because I already gave 2 points to Cleo.
True.
Maybe this is I don't know.
Hey, we can leave it at a, I don't know.
I really liked this though.
Yeah.
I did like this. And the terror at the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah, I probably do like this a little bit more than Citizen Kane.
Okay.
That might be a
So,
sweep for me.
Criteria, yeah, I think it's a sweep for me. Criteria says yes.
I wasn't
take
expecting
a
it
step
to be a
back.
sweep. Genuinely,
Yeah,
I hadn't
I'm
thought
surprised.
about it. I didn't come into this being like I know exactly what I think about this.
Yeah.
So yeah, criteria says. Sorry, I cut you off.
Yeah.
That this is better. Taking a step back. Do you feel this is better? I mean, you literally have given it a higher rating.
I mean, yeah, like, but I'm taking a step. I'm trying to look at this as objectively as possible.
Of course.
Hmm.
I won't force more subjectivity onto you.
They're very close, genuinely. Like they are very, very close, I think. I don't know. I could literally go either direction with it. Do you have strong thoughts one way or the other?
I'm really quite shocked that I'm kind of like, you know, I think it is. No, but
welcome to the show.
I mean, welcome to the show. We're back. It's back. It's time for Max to once again question why we do this. I'm gonna say yeah.
Okay.
I think if nothing else, for the fact that again, Citizen Kane has held the title for many years of the greatest film of all time, and I think it's fine if I put Cleo from 5 to 7 above it.
Yeah, I think Kane will be fine.
I think he can take it. I think he'll.
He can take it.
Well, I don't think he'll handle it well, but
no.
I think the movie can.
Yeah, he'll live.
He'll live. Well, I think that movie's pretty much about how he won't. But when a woman takes something away from him that he wants.
So true, bestie. So true. That's so funny.
I think that's the best reading of that film. Yeah, he just got mad that a woman took something away from him, so he died. I don't think the sled matters. I think that's a sled herring. That's a sled herring. I don't think that matters. Oh, funny. All right. Well, I'm gonna take it then, if I may.
Please.
Cleo from 5 to 7 is better than Citizen Kane.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah. We love to see it. We love to see a movie.
Mm-hmm. Indeed.
I'm just gonna leave it at that.
Yeah.
Parker, next time it's my pick. I'm pretty sure. We're finally gonna, speaking of those film bro assholes, this is actually a movie that I do really enjoy.
I like this movie a lot. I do.
I'm interested to talk about its kind of status. But I think it'll be especially interesting to revisit it in 2025.
Yeah.
Next time we'll Parker put his hand to his forehead.
Yeah.
He's not doing well with the bridge of his nose. Next time we're covering The Social Network.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I'm excited. I haven't seen this in a little bit, a few years. So
yeah, good movie.
Great. Thanks everybody for listening.
Right.
And
thanks, folks.
We'll see ya next time.
All right. Catch you later.
Bye.
Bye.